are traps the mind falls into so easily, you won't even notice you're already inside one. You'll call it love. You'll call it ambition. You'll even call it healing. But it's not. It's survival. And survival doesn't care if you're awake. Only that you keep moving. Nietzsche believed most people don't suffer from lack of intelligence. They suffer from lack of confrontation. And the scariest part? These traps don't scream. They whisper. They feel safe. They feel normal. There are 7 of these psychological traps. Each one quietly rewires how you think, choose, and live. And if you're human, you're already inside at least one of them. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one that is. And trust me, we've saved the most dangerous one for last. Trap 1. The need to be understood. It sounds innocent, even noble. After all, don't we all want to be seen? But Nietzsche warned, this craving is not about connection. It's about control. You don't really want to be understood. You want the world to mirror you perfectly, so you never have to confront your own doubts. You want others to validate your chaos, so you don't have to organize it yourself. And here's the trap. The more you chase understanding, the more you betray your own complexity. You begin simplifying yourself just to be digestible. You mute your truth to avoid friction. You shapeshift into someone others can handle. But strength isn't built in the eyes of others. It's built in the silence where no one's watching, and you still choose not to abandon yourself. Nietzsche believed that deep clarity only comes when you're willing to stand alone, misunderstood, uncomfortable, and still intact. The need to be understood will have you shrinking your soul just to fit in rooms you've outgrown. Don't fall for it. Trap 2. Mistaking productivity for purpose. This one is everywhere. You wake up, check your to-do list, and convince yourself that motion means meaning. You chase goals not because they fulfill you, but because the silence terrifies you. Nietzsche saw this coming. He said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But most people never ask why. They just keep moving, hoping the how will eventually justify itself. And here's the trap. The world will reward your exhaustion before it rewards your introspection. You'll be praised for being busy, never for being still. So you overwork, overcommit, overextend. Not because you're passionate, but because you're afraid that if you stop, you'll hear the question, what am I really doing this for? This trap keeps you distracted, addicted to achievement, performing worthiness instead of living truth. And the cost? You build a life that looks impressive, but feels hollow. You climb ladders only to realize they lead nowhere, because activity isn't purpose, it's noise. Unless it's anchored in something real. So slow down, not because you're weak, but because you finally refuse to mistake movement for meaning. Trap 3. The addiction to certainty. It sounds responsible, knowing what you want, having a plan, staying in control. But Nietzsche saw certainty not as wisdom, but as a comfort drug. He wrote, "Convictions are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies, because once you're certain, you stop questioning. And once you stop questioning, you stop growing." This is the trap. You become so addicted to being right, to being safe, to being sure, that you kill the very thing that could evolve you. Doubt. You don't fall in love. You calculate. You don't explore ideas. You defend your beliefs like armor. And in doing so, you become trapped in a cage made of your own conclusions. But the truth is this. Growth isn't found in what you know. It's found in what you're willing to unlearn. Certainty is seductive because it gives the illusion of control. But control is not clarity. You can know exactly where you're going and still end up empty. You can be so right that you lose your openness, your wonder, your humility. Nietzsche didn't want you to live in answers. He wanted you to live in the fire of the question. So next time you feel discomfort, don't reach for the easy explanation. Sit in the unknown. Let it burn away what's no longer true. Because only in uncertainty does the truth have a chance to speak. Trap 4. Turning pain into identity. We all go through pain, but somewhere along the way, some people stop experiencing it and start becoming it. You don't say, "I feel broken." You say, "I am broken." You don't say, "I was hurt." You say, "This is who I am now." And Nietzsche saw the danger in this. He believed that suffering should be a forge, not a label. He said, to live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. But he never said to become the suffering. Here's the trap. You mistake insight for healing. You confuse awareness with transformation. You wrap your pain in poetry, put it on display, and let it define your story. Why? Because identity feels safer than emptiness, even if that identity is built on wounds. You become the anxious one, the abandoned one, the survivor. But survival is not the goal. It's the starting point. You weren't meant to stay there. You were meant to rebuild, not rebrand yourself around the ruin. So ask yourself, who would you be if you stopped telling the story that made you feel safe, but kept you small? Your pain is valid, but it is not your name. Let it inform you, shape you, but never let it imprison you. Nietzsche didn't admire pain. He admired the alchemist, the one who could turn pain into power without needing to wear it like a badge. You can honor what hurt you without becoming it. Trap 5. Worshipping logic and killing emotion. We've been told that logic is power, that emotion clouds judgment, that if you want to win in life, you have to stay rational, cold, sharp, objective. And sure, logic is useful, but Nietzsche warned against turning it into a god. Because when logic becomes your only compass, you lose your capacity to feel, to empathize, to live. Here's the trap. You start analyzing everything. Your relationships, your fears, your dreams. Not to understand them, but to control them. Emotion becomes a problem to solve, not an experience to move through. You detach. You intellectualize. You say, it doesn't bother me, when it clearly does. You say, I've moved on, but your chest still tightens when you hear their name. And in that detachment, you think you're free, but you're not. You're just cut off from yourself. Nietzsche believed that strength wasn't about escaping feeling. It was about bearing it, holding it without drowning in it, staying human in a world that rewards numbness. You weren't built to be a machine. You weren't meant to dissect every emotion until it dies under your microscope. Some things aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be felt. So let the grief hit. Let the joy break through. Let the anger surface without shame. Because the goal is not control. The goal is wholeness. And wholeness only happens when reason and emotion stand side by side. Not as enemies, but as allies. Trap 6. Mistaking control for strength. You hold it all together. The schedule, the smile, the story. You micromanage every detail of your life, believing that if you just control enough, you'll finally feel safe. But Nietzsche saw this for what it really is. He said, he who cannot obey himself will be commanded, because control isn't strength. It's fear, dressed up in discipline. And here's the trap. You think strength is about eliminating uncertainty, but real strength is how you move through it. Control addicts live on edge. They can't relax, can't trust, can't let go. They don't lead their lives. They manage them like threats. You overthink every word, pre-plan every outcome, try to predict pain before it happens. But control is not protection, it's paralysis. You build a life so tight, so calculated that nothing new can enter. No surprises, no growth, no mystery. You don't become untouchable, you become unreachable. And in doing so, you disconnect not only from people, but from yourself. Because strength isn't knowing what's next. It's knowing you'll face it when it comes, without losing yourself in the process. So loosen your grip, not because things will fall apart, but because holding too tightly is what's keeping you from truly living. Trap 7. Confusing awareness with evolution. This is the most seductive trap of all, because it feels like progress. You read the books, watch the videos, say the right words, trauma, attachment style, inner child. You can explain your dysfunction with precision, but nothing in your life actually changes. And Nietzsche would have seen through it in a second. He said, there are no beautiful surfaces without a terrible depth. And here's the trap. You fall in love with the surface of insight, but you refuse to dive into the work. You mistake language for liberation. You say, I know I self-sabotage, but you still do it. You say, I attract the wrong people, but never change your boundaries. You stay in cycles, comforted by your clarity, paralyzed by your patterns. Because awareness without action is just ego in a smarter costume. And this is the danger. You become too intelligent to be challenged, too self-aware to admit you're stuck, too articulate to be honest. You hide behind your insight instead of letting it humble you. Because real evolution? It's brutal. It requires grief, discomfort, accountability. Not just naming the wound, but closing it. Not just understanding the pattern, but breaking it. And until you do, you're not growing. You're just narrating your stagnation in prettier language. You've just walked through 7 traps, not 7 tips, not 7 quotes. 7 places where the human mind quietly surrenders its power without ever realizing it. This isn't about fear, it's about choice. You can keep calling it fate, keep blaming the world, keep repeating patterns and dressing them up as personality. Or you can stop. You can interrupt the autopilot. You can get uncomfortable enough to evolve. You can face the parts of yourself you've spent years outsourcing, denying, avoiding. Nietzsche never promised peace. He promised clarity, and clarity costs. Because once you see the trap, you can never unsee it. So now the question is, which trap are you in right now? And are you finally ready to get out of it?